Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to Breakfast in the Class. Breakfast in the Class today is dedicated in loving memory of Joel Morano, Alav Shalom Linushmat Yosef ben Bahiyeh, for his 10th Azkara by his children. Also dedicated in honor of our parents, Charlie, Shalom, and Miriam Darwish, on their 25th year wedding anniversary. Thank you for bringing us to Israel and making Aliyah. May you keep being the joyful parents you are, full of Midot Tovot. Also dedicated for the complete Refuah Shlema of Chana Batzim Feg and Leah Shimon Mazal Fortuné. And finally, this entire week is dedicated by the Torah Center Silver donors, Rachel and Benedetto Kalun, in memory of our fallen Hayalim and in honor of those who continue to defend Am Yisrael and will bring our hostages back home. Be'ezat Hashem. My friends, our pasuk in the beginning of the parasha begins, Emor el HaKohanim Bnei Aaron ve'amarta alehem. Speak to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and you shall say to them. Speak to Aaron, to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron, and you shall say to them. All the commentators ask the same question. Emor ve'amarta. Say to them and say to them. Emor el Kohanim. Speak to them, Bnei Aaron ve'amarta alehem. And you should, what was the first say that then you got to the second say? Very famous question, right? There are many approaches to answering this question. And what it means, what we're trying to communicate by say to them and say to them. I'll just give you an example. One opinion says that the first saying is actually not a line, it's not a commandment, it's not a mitzvah, but it's Emor el HaKohanim, say to them, Bnei Aharon, that you are the sons of Aaron. That's the extent of that first statement. It's a saying, a reminding to someone how special their lineage is, who they come from, and therefore what they're capable of. And once you say that, you could speak to them and ask of them things after explaining to them or expressing to them how powerful or how much koach they actually have. My friends, I would like to perhaps present a different approach, an approach that Rashi seems to state. Rashi says, what does it say? Emor ve'amarta lehazhir gidolim al ketanim. So let's read the words of Rashi in their most simple form. It's coming to communicate that Kohanim, that are elders, that are parents, have an obligation to say those laws and those commandments to their children. So Emor means say to the Kohanim, the elders, the adults. Ve'amarta alehem means and let them say to their children. La'azhir gidolim al ketanim. To rebuke, to express to the elders al ketanim on the youngers. There's an obvious problem with this attempt to reconcile the two Emor ve'amartas. What's the obvious problem? I don't need a separate pasuk to tell me about the Kohanim telling their children. You know why I don't need that? Because every single mitzvah in the Torah, I have an obligation to teach my children. I have an obligation to teach my children about Shabbat. I have an obligation to teach my children about stealing. I have an obligation to teach my children about kibud avaim. So any mitzvah in the Torah, there's a mitzvah called chinuch, which means that from the time that the child is capable of understanding that specific law, and by the way, that idea of chinuch is, as my rabbi always used to tell us, it's asymmetrical. So as an example, a child probably understands that they have to respect and listen to their parents at a much younger age than a child understands that they need to, always tell the truth. One idea is something which is a moral, ethical obligation, and one idea is who's in charge. There's an authority figure. Children from a young age recognize authority. So a child might be obligated in chinuch, and when I say obligated, I don't mean that the kid is obligated. A child has zero responsibilities until they're bar mitzvah. Zero. They're not considered a bardat. But you as the parent have a responsibility for that child from the point that they reach chinuch on that specific mitzvah. Is that clear? Yes? So therefore, if there's a mitzvah of chinuch, by every single mitzvah, I have a mitzvah to make sure my son goes to shul. I have a mitzvah to make sure that my son keeps Shabbat. I have a mitzvah to make sure that my son understands the concept of giving tzedakah. All of those are things that are dependent on me teaching my child. And by the way, if I don't do that, then in Shamayim, I get judged for not doing the mitzvah of chinuch. Where do we find in the most prevalent way this concept? Two words that we say every single morning and every single night. Vishinantam libanecha. These words of Torah, vishinantam, and you will teach them to your children. So we know that there is an obligation of chinuch. So why would the Torah over here come to tell me that you have to teach an older Kohen to teach a younger Kohen about how to be a Kohen, about not becoming impure, not going into a cemetery, etc., etc., etc. So I want to share with you an approach from the Noam Elimelech, which hopefully will help us understand what's going on over here. I have to put on a hood now. She biflij. Sorry? It's a mitzvah to teach, what do you mean? Oh, in general, Misorah. Yeah, sure. All of it becomes part of chinuch. I'll give you an example. Part of Misorah is how a person has emunah, right? Is the way we believe about things. If you want your child to be a person that has emunah, you need to teach that Misorah. You need to teach that approach to mitzvot. The reason why we're able to keep our mitzvot is because we have, along with those mitzvot, the Misorah of how we approach things and the mindset that we're in order to be able to do those things in the right way, right? All of that becomes part and parcel of what you need to communicate to your child.
Stories from the old country is considered Mekayim Mitzvah.
It depends. If stories from the old country are getting them closer to Judaism, yes. If stories from the old country are going to make them further from Judaism, that's not Misorah to Judaism, right? That's kvetching about how things were, or, etc., etc. Okay, Avi, could I trouble you to make me one as well?
Sorry?
Can I trouble you to make me one as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just while you're there, while you're doing it. Jonathan, you're wondering why I didn't ask you, right? You were wondering?
No.
Okay, do you know why? Excellent. It's another law to learn. You're not allowed to ask a Kohen to serve you. There's even people that were strict at a table. They wouldn't ask a Kohen sitting in the middle of the table to pass them the chicken, because that was shimush in a Kohen. However, the chinuch actually says, and others, that a student, Kohen, is allowed to serve his rabbi. But I'd rather be strict. Okay, let's move on. Especially because Avi was in the middle of pouring himself a cup of coffee, so I figured I could ask for two, huh? No, it's only on the Kohen. Yes?
Could we say that those two different statements about passing this on, we say the first one is to let Aaron know your descendants are going to be passed on because Nadav and the two sons that died didn't stop that being passed on. And then the second statement is to guarantee that the lineage will go through the Cohen priest to the sons of Aaron.
Lovely idea. What Adina's one sweetener, thank you. What Adina is sharing is maybe the point of this was to communicate to Aaron that he would have children, that he would have a future after losing two sons. This was a nice way of telling Aaron that he would have a future. I love that. Beautiful idea. But listen to this. This is the Noam Elimelech's take on the words of Rashi. He says, what does it mean? Lahazhir gedolim al ketanim, to warn the elders about the youngers. He says as follows. When a person is attempting to try and teach the young, he should not do it in a way which is clear and obvious as to what he's doing in terms of commanding the child. Thank you so much. Because when a person does that, oftentimes the son, the young person, the daughter, they reject what their parent is telling them. One of the most powerful urges that teenagers feel, aside from the hormonal urges that happen as they come into puberty, right, is the urge, a terrible urge for independence. And you have many kids that the only reason why they won't listen to what you're saying is because you're the one saying it. And in attempting to be their own selves, to rise from being children to adults, which is what a teenager, that's the period of their life that they're going through that process, they feel they need to reject any authority that exists, not for the sake of rejecting the authority, but for the sake of establishing their own autonomy. Says the Noam Elimelech, you want to be able to communicate to your children how to live their lives. Lehazir gedolim al ketanim. Speak in front of your child about yourself, about your husband and wife and husband. You know, we made a mistake today. You know, if we would have done it this way, we would have had time to go study some more Torah. Instead of telling the kid, bum, why don't you go study Torah? The father will say about himself, such a shame that I did it this way. Now I ran out of time. I don't have time to study. You know, I really should study every day. When the kid hears an element of musar that resonates with him, but is not directed at him, he finds a tremendous opportunity to be able to do the right thing without feeling criticized or having that negative energy directed at him. My friends, since that is the case, we understand a very different approach to what the words of Rashi mean. Le'azir gedolim al ketanim means to warn the elders al ketanim, for the sake of the youngers. You know, I always think to myself that that's the pshat of the pasuk when it says v'dibarta bam. Right? Speak in these words of Torah. What does it mean? Does it mean that you speak to the child? No. You want to know how you achieve vishinantam levanecha? Not by repeating it to them all the time, but v'dibarta bam, by speaking of it in front of them. Speaking to friends, speaking to the rabbi, speaking to your wife, speaking to random people. The child sees that the father is speaking about it, obsessed with it, encouraged by it, and the son also decides, or the daughter also decides, you know something, this is my father, this is my mother, this is how they behave, this is what I should be doing as well, or at least this is how I should be thinking as well. When a person does that, then they're capable of achieving great things. I want to share with you an example of someone doing this in the most beautiful way. The Hafetz Chaim was always traveling and selling his books in every town. Anyway, he arrives at one place, Jewish-owned inn and a restaurant, and he sees that a fellow walks in to this kosher place, right? No one who's not Jewish is eating in this kosher place because it's more expensive, and unnecessarily so if you're not Jewish. Walks in, sits down, orders the food, they bring him the food, shoves the food in his mouth, no beracha, no kippah on his head, no netilat yadayim. Hafetz Chaim cares about this Jewish person very deeply. He wants to go and teach him what the right thing to do is. Before the Hafetz Chaim can even get out of his chair, the innkeeper comes running over. He says, Rabbi, please, Dachilak, it's such an honor to have you here in our place. Please don't go over to him. Like I could see you want to. And tell him about a beracha, about his... This guy, he's a wild guy. He's a lifetime career mercenary, soldier. At the time, when he was 7 years old, he was grabbed from his parents' home, barely had time to learn anything, established his Jewish identity, stolen from his parents' home, drafted into the army of the Tsar, and he became one of the famous, the Cantonists. Who were the Cantonists? These children that were taken and sent to the Tsar's army. And you know how long they served in the army? The army sentence for the Jewish young boys that were kidnapped from their parents under the Tsar in Russia was for 25 years. Imagine a 7-year-old boy coming back as a 32-year-old man, having seen and killed and run from from bullets and knives and swords. This was their life. They came back hardened warriors with no drop of spirituality left. Anyway, he sees this guy with his tattoos, monster of a man. The Chafetz Chaim says to him, don't bother. It's going to fall on deaf ears. The guy's going to curse you out. Maybe he'll be violent with you. But he's definitely not going to listen. There's no foundation to build it on. Don't go and give him musar. Don't go tell him what to do. Chafetz Chaim smiles at the innkeeper. He says, thank you, I appreciate your intervention. He says, but I'll be okay. He walks over to this man, doesn't introduce himself, and he says, listen, I've heard about you. The guy says, you heard about me? I heard about you, he says. I heard that as a young boy they came and they grabbed you. I heard that you were drafted into the army and did acts of valor and heroism for the Tsar. I've heard that you've been wandering for the last 25 years and you only recently came back. And he says, and I'm so jealous of you. The Chafetz Chaim, by the way, was so short. I don't know if you ever saw the video, that there's one video of the Chafetz Chaim. Right when he's coming for the first time into the meeting of all of the rabbis, the Agudat Arba Aratzot, okay? And you see him walking. He was, I think, 4 foot tall, okay? Very, very, very short. A personality, and changed the world. He was the biggest rabbi of his generation. He walks up to this guy, and he's telling him all this. And he looks at him, and he's looking at this, but he could see he's a religious Jew. And he says, I'm jealous of you. And this man says, you're jealous of me for what? He says, I'm jealous of the sachar, of the reward you're going to have in Shamayim. Your portion in Gan Eden. You know how difficult it is after 25 years of that to come to a place like this to eat kosher food, to still identify as a Jewish person. I can't believe, how strong your spirit is. It's unbelievable. I'm so proud of you. We need more Jews like you, on and on. The guy, he's so overwhelmed from listening to this. He starts crying that a Jewish person recognized not his faults, not his deficiencies as a Jew, but what he still held on to. He's crying, listening to this old man talking to him. And he says, and who are you? The soldier asks him. And the Chafetz Chaim says, my name is Yisrael Meir Kagan. Everybody knew who the Chafetz Chaim was. Everybody. The minute he finds who the Chafetz Chaim is, he gets down on his knees, he's kissing the rabbi's toes, like hugging him. The innkeeper is watching. Can't believe his mouth is hanging open. This violent guy, the guy who he felt he needed to go tell the Chafetz Chaim not to start up with, because he might kill him. And look at what's happened. And the Chafetz Chaim says, right now, he says, what you've done is unbelievable. He says, but if you learned a few things, how to say the prayers, if you learned how to make the blessings, you spent some time trying to be, a holy Jew, your place in Shamayim would be unimaginable. And the man hears and he says, okay, so what do I need to do? And the rabbi starts telling him. And he winds up doing teshuvah shlema, and through that became a tzaddik gamur at the hands of one conversation with the Chafetz Chaim. My friends, Emor ve'amarta. The pasuk is telling us, lehazir gedolim v'ketanim. What do you do when you want to talk to your children, to the young, but the young are not capable of hearing you? You talk, but not to them, in front of them. Your mazhir gedolim. I've seen so many times great tzaddikim giving words of Torah. I've merited in my life to listen to speeches to shiurim from unbelievable people. And there's this moment in a speech where a great Rosh Hashiva or a Gadol Ador will say, and I'm talking to myself here, or he'll say beautifully, we all need to, we're part of the same crew. Like, me, Hamu Badia, we go play basketball Friday, Friday afternoon before Shabbat. Like, who's we? What we? In what world is you and all of us a we? There's no we here. But what does he understand? You speak to great people, and you demand from great people the smallest of things. And then the people who are only capable of hearing the smallest of things can hear what you're saying and on board that musar. Emor ve'amarta therefore is la'azir gidolim al kitanim. Talk to the elders. Talk to the great ones. And then the young ones and the small ones and the not yet having grown ones will pay attention as well. I thought to myself, maybe an element of the Noam Elimelech is one more extension. What was the question we started with? The pasuk says, "Emor el haKohanim b'nei Aaron." Say to the Kohanim, the sons of Aaron. Doesn't say what you should say to them. Ve'amarta alem, and you should say to them. And the question was, what are these two things? You didn't say anything the first time. You're telling me another saying? Listen to this. Mechila, but it's my own addition, so if it's incorrect, blame me, not the Noam Elimelech. You know what my answer is? My answer is, sometimes, Emor, you want to say something. And the way you say something is by not saying anything. How many times, when you want someone to change their behavior, but you want to say something when you're angry, and you want to say something when they're angry, or you want to say something when they're vulnerable, or when you're vulnerable, and saying anything in this minute is actually going to ensure that what you really want out of the situation 100% will not occur. Says Rashi, La'azir gidolim al kitanim. Remember elders, remember parents, remember educators, remember rabbis and rebbitzins. Sometimes the way you communicate with young people is by not communicating at all. They know what they did wrong. They know, you know what they did wrong. You know what they need you to do right now? You know what they need you to say right now? Nothing. Let me get out of this with the shred of dignity I have left. You know you really should. I know. Emor el haKohanim b'nei Aaron, say nothing. They know, you know. You know how valuable, do you know how appreciative they'll be of you not saying, I told you so? Ya'ani. My friends, I want to end with this. On Shabbat, someone came to me and they said, I listened to breakfast in the class in the car. And all of a sudden, it was a class from last week or 2 weeks ago. I remember when. And we mentioned in the class the Korban Olah. And someone said, his daughter, she's 2.5 years old. She says, Daddy, put on the class of Olaf. I said Korban Olah. What does 2-year-old hear? Olaf. Olaf is a snowman from the kids movie from Frozen. The kid watches Frozen on repeat 1 trillion times. She hears a rabbi class. Also, the rabbi's talking about Olaf. Right? She's so excited. 2 days later, she says, put on the class, Rabbi Farhi, Olaf. So I promised him that I was going to give a class and mention Olaf the snowman. How funny he is, how his. I had to go onto Wikipedia. I didn't know enough about what Olaf is, but this is for you, okay? His arms fall off. He has a carrot nose. He loves the princess or whatever her name is, Elsa, Anna. I don't know which one is which. Okay, unbelievable. Olaf is fantastic. He's very happy. He always likes to take care of the people that he loves. This is Olaf. I promised him I would do a class and mention Olaf actually. But my friends, the reason why I'm bringing it in over here, Shema, is the Musar is unbelievable. Here's a 2.5-year-old kid. What are the chances she ever asks her father in the car to put this on? 100% of the time, children ask you to put music on in the car that will literally drive you insane. They want that song or that thing. You're like, Shema Israel, please not now or I'll drive off the road. Right? But that's the one. Please put it on, put it on, put it on. For a 2.5-year-old to ask for a rabbi class. What's going on? You know what the answer is? In her mind, at least, the rabbi was talking about something that I love, that I like, that I relate to. So now you have a 2.5-year-old in a car seat asking the father to put on breakfast in the class. How much could we communicate to our children, to the next generation, if they believed, if they felt when we spoke to them, this person is speaking about something that I enjoy. I enjoy listening to what this person is saying. And all it took was one word that she heard incorrectly for her to want to listen to Rabbi Farhi Olaf class. So here you go. This is your Olaf class. But the lesson you've taught, not just me, but all of us, about what it means, Emor ve'amarta, about saying the right things so that what you said could be heard, is a gift that you've given to all the listeners of Breakfast in the Class. You should grow up to be a big tzaddiket, to stand under the chuppah with an amazing person, to have family for yourself, and Be'ezat Hashem, listen not only to this Breakfast in the Class, but all of them, to live by them, to raise your children by them, in the ways of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Torah and Mitzvot. Baruch Adonai Le'olam. Amen ve'amen. Rabbi Chananya ben Akasha omer.